Good evening, and thank you for joining us. My name is Judy Blake, and I'm a program coordinator with Family to Family Network. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I have with me my colleagues, Leslie Lawson and Leonella Castillo, who are joining me this evening. This is a safe place. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box. And if you would like to keep your information private, you can always private message one of us and we will answer your question for you. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about the autism supplement. And if you could, please write in the chat box if you know a little bit about the autism supplement, if you know a lot, or if you have no idea what we're talking about, but you know you need to know what the autism supplement is. That would be great. Next slide, please. So we're going to go through these first few slides fairly quickly because we want to get into what the autism supplement is and what it isn't. This is a great website, Texas Project First, and it's in both English and Spanish. And it is written by parents for parents, and you'll see the link right there. And it answers your questions about the autism supplement and your rights as a parent on texasprojectfirst.org. Next slide, please. So just remember that in any meeting at the school and definitely with ARD and IEP meetings, that parents are an important part of the committee and you're an equal member part of the committee. You know your child, and if you don't agree with something, that's okay. You can disagree. Just know that that document that you do sign is a binding document, so that it's important that you are satisfied with the minutes that were read to you and that everything should be in your native language. Next slide, please. Prior written notice. Please know that the school must let you know 5 days prior to their decision about wanting to propose something, to change something, or if they refuse to do something. And they have to let you know why. Our kids are entitled to a free and appropriate education, and they cannot just make decisions one-sided. You have the right to be notified 5 days prior. Next slide, please. Again, a little bit more about prior written notice. You need to know why they're making that decision. What did they use to make that decision? Was it an assessment? Was it data? What did they do? And what is the IEP going to do in order to support your child in the least restrictive environment? Next slide, please. So there are 11 strategies for students with autism, and this is also known as the autism supplement. And we're going to go over each one of these strategies. Just know that the committee must consider each of these 11 strategies. That's not saying that it's going to apply to your child, each of these strategies, but they must be considered, it must be discussed, and if they don't want to use that strategy because they feel maybe it's not appropriate for your child, I know with my child, not every strategy was needed, but they must give a good reason to say why that strategy is not being used for your child or loved one. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background. The autism supplement is really an important document, and it was created in the 1980s because there were concerns that the needs of our kids impacted by autism were not being met in the public school. There were minor revisions in the 1990s, and there was a major revision in 2007. And the Texas legislature directed the Texas Education Agency, the TEA, to involve stakeholders, that's parents like us, to update the supplement. We are the only state that has such a thing. So this is something Texas really got right, and parents need to be aware of it. Next slide, please. So what the autism supplement does not do, it does not state that specific programs or services be provided to students with autism. It's not a mandate. You know, there's a mandate for free and appropriate public education, but not a mandate for all 11 of those strategies to be used for your child. It's just saying they must be considered. There's not a mandate for a specific degree or credential for teachers and paraprofessionals or teachers' aides who work with your child. Next slide, please. What it does do is it requires that ARD committee, that IEP committee, to consider each of the 11 strategies, regardless of the student's level of functioning. Doesn't matter if your child is verbal or nonverbal. It doesn't matter if they're in special education or general education. If they have that autism diagnosis, these strategies must be considered. And to provide a rationale if a strategy is not used. So there needs to be a written statement as to why they're saying Johnny doesn't need this particular strategy. It does require that the personnel be qualified and trained in both general and student-specific strategies. So yes, the previous slide said they don't have to have credentials, but they do at least need to be qualified and trained if they are going to work with your child. Next slide, please. Strategy number 1, extended programming. This is the first of the 11 strategies that Leslie's going to go into. Thanks, Leslie.
Thanks, Judy. This includes extended school day, which I don't see happening for a lot of students, but it does happen for some. Like if the student needs a longer school day to receive a free and appropriate education. But what I see a lot of is ESY, which is extended school year. So during the summer breaks, holidays, spring breaks, things like that, maybe a student still needs some services during that break if they're going to come back to school and have regression, or maybe they were just beginning to learn a new skill, and if they took a break from that, they'd lose all of that too. So I have a whole handout on extended school year services and what that means. If anybody would like to email me, I can certainly provide that to you. ESY is not limited to a specific type, duration, or amount of services. You know, most school districts have an ESY program in the summer, but that might not be appropriate for your child. So for instance, one summer, my son, he needed to work on communication. And so he didn't go to their ESY program, but he did go for speech therapy services in the summer. My friend's son, who functions at a higher level than my son, he went to a regular ed program that was for typical students in the summer and had special education support in that program. So it could look like a lot of different things. Some school districts have social skills programs in the summer for kids to work on their social skills. So a lot of different things. It should be individualized. And I know Judy was talking about, you know, none of these are mandated, but you still have a say. You know, at the end of every ARD meeting, you have to agree or disagree. And if they are trying to leave something out that you think is needed and important for your student, that might be a time that you might choose to disagree and use your procedural safeguards. Not that you're going to disagree about every little thing, but if it's something important, a lot of times that's all it takes, is because when you disagree, you come back to the table. And I've seen it many times with extended school year. They say, oh, it's not needed, and they don't really give you a reason, or they'll say the data doesn't support it. Well, ask to see the data. Um, did they really take data? So definitely think about this one if you think your student needs this over the summer or a long break. Next. These are some of the services that might be considered for extended day or extended school year. Next. The next strategy is a schedule reflecting minimally unstructured time and active engagement. So it should be really clear to someone walking into the room what each student should be doing at any given time. This is really important in case you have a substitute teacher. So if your child has a daily schedule, they would know exactly what each student is supposed to be doing at any point during the day or in any class, what supports are needed for that part of the day. So this is really important. And I can share my son's autism supplement just so you can see how it's very specific to him. Not that it would be the same for your child. If you email me, I can share it in a sample of his daily schedules included. It's old. My son's an adult now, but it gives you an idea what a very specific autism supplement would look like. And I know it helps me to see things like that, to get a good idea of what exactly we're talking about, because a lot of times we see an autism supplement and it's just got cookie cutter information in it, like not needed, or just, oh, we work on communication all day long, or our class has a schedule, so you don't want to see that in an autism supplement. You want to see very specific information for each student. Next slide. Here's some samples. There on the daily schedule is what I was talking about, where what they're doing at any given time. I would want a little more information about, do they need para support during that particular time period, or do they need other types of support during that time period? On the right-hand side, sometimes classrooms use work activity systems for a specific task that tell the child what to do, how much to do, and when they're finished. And that's not a daily schedule, but that's a work activity system that could be worked into the daily schedule. And all of these things should be across all settings, so the children learn how to generalize to different settings. Next. Here's some examples of visual schedules. Probably this one is at the top is more like for at home, and that would be good if your child really benefits from schedules, like a visual schedule or even a written word schedule. If it's working at school, it would probably work good at home too. And they can be adapted for home or for school. Next. The next strategy is in-home and community-based training, and they would do an evaluation for this. So if you're a new parent, or if you're having difficulties at home with your child and need some help because maybe things are going good at school and maybe they're not going so good at home, or vice versa, in-home and community-based training is a good thing to ask for. They do an evaluation, and then somebody comes to your home and helps with setting up schedules, working on behaviors, helping you learn how to deal with things that they're successful at doing at school, or maybe you can give them some ideas too on what works for you at home that they can use at school. These services can be in the home, at the daycare, also in, like, if you have trouble when you go out in the community with behaviors or something like that, they could do that too. Um, S so s Some people don't like others coming into their home setting, so there are other alternatives, like maybe the teacher makes a visual schedule with your input for at home. Maybe you don't have the, computer program to do a visual schedule. Maybe they send home interactive notebooks that you can work on with your child, or maybe a videotape of the teacher working with your student, so you can see how to do that at home also. It just needs to be practical and work for your family. So um, just think about that if you need help in the home with that. Next slide. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help from the school. I know when we were just getting started, a teacher that knew a lot about autism, and my son was newly diagnosed. She came in and it was so helpful and reassuring for me to know that I was doing things right or what I was doing wrong. And you don't know what you don't know. So it was very helpful. It could be very helpful. So next slide. Strategy 4, positive behavior supports. This is really important. You definitely want to make sure you have behaviors under control before your child becomes an adult, because it's much harder to do when they're much older. And there's not a lot of programs out there for adults with behavior difficulties. And behavior is one of the things that's going to really prevent your child or your adult from participating in the community fully, or being part of higher education or a good day program or a work program, or employment if they have behaviors. So we definitely want to work on these while they're in school. And the school does have a lot of supports for that. They have licensed school psychologists, they have behavior analysts that can help develop they can do a functional behavioral assessment and look at what's happening before, during, and after the behavior occurs, and how everybody's responding to it. And that helps them develop a behavior intervention plan, and helps replace undesirable behaviors with more desirable behaviors, and identify replacement behaviors. And when we talk about behaviors, not just meltdowns or aggressive or self-injurious behaviors, just any type of behavior. I mean, anything can be a behavior that really wouldn't be desirable, that you need to change. And also the school has school-wide behavior programs for all students. So your student should be included in those, and peer supports and self-monitoring systems. They have, if your student understands that, they could have like a sticker program where, if they get so many stickers for doing certain things, then they get a reward from home. So reward systems, if that works for your student. So definitely want to get the behaviors under control. And if your student has behaviors that are keeping them from making progress and learning, feel free to reach out, and I can give you a sample letter to request a formal functional behavioral assessment and all the information about that, so you can ask for that to happen. Next slide. We want to remember that behavior is communication. So especially if you have somebody, whether they're verbal or nonverbal, sometimes the behavior is their way to communicate something to us, or to the teachers or their peers. All behaviors happen for a reason, and your student could be engaging in behaviors to gain attention, to escape a task, to target a sensory need of theirs. I know my son makes a lot of loud noises, and we think he does that because it's a sensory need. He likes to hear that. So whatever the behavior is, there's a reason for it. And so we have to figure that out and hopefully help them meet that need without having an unacceptable behavior. Next slide. So this really hits me hard. But if you think about it, if a child doesn't know how to read, we teach. If they don't know how to swim, we teach them. If they don't know how to multiply, we teach. If they don't know how to drive, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to behave, it seems like everybody hesitates. What do we do if a child doesn't know how to behave? A lot of times, the first thing people want to do is punish. And really, we should not be punishing. We should be figuring out what the behavior is and teach them how to behave and meet that need that they're trying to communicate through behavior. We should be able to finish that last sentence just like we finish all the others. Next slide. So this is a couple of samples from different autism supplements on the positive behavior supports. And I just like to give examples of what that might look like in a student's autism supplement. Not that these would be specific to your child. They could be, but they might not be because, you know, all children with autism are different. But I don't know if you're like me, if I see something, if I have a visual of something that kind of helps me understand it better. You'll see a lot of the autism supplements will have check boxes of needed or not needed. And there should always be information in each box more than just a simple word or a few words, because you're going to have something specific to the child, or if that particular autism strategy is not needed, you should have an explanation of why it's not needed. It shouldn't just say not needed. So this just gives you some examples and ideas to look at and think about your child and see if any of those are appropriate. And hopefully that's helpful to you. Next slide. Strategy 5 is futures planning. The law states that transition planning begins at or before the 14th birthday in Texas. And so we're always planning for the future. So everything we do, even at an early age, sets them on a path of where they're going to be when they exit public school. And we should all have hopes and dreams for our kids, and hopefully they have hopes and dreams too. And you work backwards from that. We want to prepare them for life after high school in the areas of independent living, employment, and further education. Next slide. These next two slides, this slide and the next one, kind of give you a visual of that. And you'll see on the left is talking about, you know, living, working in the community or education. And then you're going to look over to the far right-hand corner. And if that's the end goal for life after high school, then you're going to work backwards. How do we work on getting to that end goal in elementary, and how do we work on it, and what does that work look like in middle, and what does it look like in high school? So you kind of, and it's going to change from year to year, because it's hard to, nobody has a crystal ball, and when they're little, it's hard to envision how they're going to live independently, or how they're going to go to college, or how they're going to work. But you want to have goals like that, and we want to have high expectations, and we want to have IEP goals and objectives that help them get to each step closer to what their goal is for life after high school. Next slide. Here's just another example. And, all of our kids are different. And so just like to have a lot of different examples so you can kind of see what you should be doing at each step to help get your students to be as independent as possible and be able to live in the community and not have to go live in the state-supported living center or an institution. Next slide. Strategy 6 is parent family training and support. And so that's a little different than in-home training. This is more about information that the school district should be providing that could be specific to your child's disability or just specific to education in general. Some school districts will have trainings throughout the years where they bring in speakers. Some may give you information about conferences or trainings that organizations like Family to Family and the ARC of Harris County or the ARC of Fort Bend have that would be helpful to you. So the school should be asking you what kind of help you need, and you can also ask for that help too. Maybe you need to observe your student or have an evaluation occur before the ARD meeting, not during the ARD meeting. So they should be providing information to you in some form. I know when my son was young, the school paid for me to go to the state autism conference. And then there's an inclusion works, like if your student is going to be included in regular ed for all or part of the day. They have stipends so parents can go and learn more about autism, learn more about having their kid in the least restrictive environment. Next slide. And this is so true. Knowledge empowers you. And my son's 32 now, and I'm still learning things. He's not in school anymore. I'm working on learning all the things that come with having an adult with autism. But all the trainings I take, everything that I attend helps me learn more and helps to benefit my child. So the more you know, the more you're able to help your child and get what your child needs. Next slide. Strategy number 7 is staff to student ratio. So what does the ratio need to be for your student to make appropriate progress on the general ed curriculum? This should be determined not by how much staff the school has. It should be determined by the needs of the child. What kind of ratio do they need to make some good progress on their IEP goals and objectives? And that ratio could differ throughout different parts of the day. You can be real creative, and you'll see that if you want a copy of my son's daily schedule, that, during some parts of the day, he didn't need as much support. In other parts, he needed more support. If he was learning a new skill, it had to be one-on-one. If he was just trying to maintain a skill, he didn't need. And that doesn't, a lot of times they'll say, oh, your child has to go to life skills because they need a low student-teacher ratio. That's really not in the spirit of the IDEA law. The law wants all students to be included in the regular education classroom with the supports and services they need to make appropriate progress in the general ed. So they really shouldn't be saying that. If your student can only participate in a regular ed setting with a one-on-one para, then that's what they need. I'm not saying every student's going to get that, but what is it going to look like so your child can be included with their typically developing peers?
And Leslie, if I could just add to that, we always encourage parents and families to work collaboratively with schools. We know that our schools are so overwhelmed. You watch the news, you read the newspaper, there's teacher shortages, there's special education teacher shortages, and we understand that. But at the end of the day, your child is entitled to that free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. And, we understand that, okay, once in a while, the paraprofessional maybe is under the weather, doesn't show, they couldn't get somebody to be with your child. But if it states in the ARD minutes and in your IEP document that your child is supposed to have a specific staff to student ratio, and it's consistently not happening, that needs to be brought to the attention of the principal and the special education chairperson and addressed.
Very good point, Judy. I know things are hard right now for the schools, but we really have to look out for our students and be their best advocate and make sure they're getting what they need. But of course, we do want to be nice, and we do want to work with the school and give some grace at the same time. Next slide, please. Here's just kind of a little sample of what a daily schedule might look like. It's going to look different. This looks like it's probably for an older student in high school because they have advisory, but this kind of gives you the idea of, okay, when they arrive at school, what do they need? For a younger student, it might be that a paraprofessional meets them at the bus to make sure they get to their class, um, and what the student teacher ratio is. And you can see it varies throughout the day. Maybe this student had a really hard time eating lunch in the cafeteria because of sensory issues with it being noisy. And we don't want to take all that away. We want to hopefully make that easier for them by exposing them to that and giving them the support they need. Because if we want them to live in the community when they're adults, we can't just shelter them from every little thing. So anyway, this is just some different ideas for you to look at. Next slide. And then here's another sample, and you could make this up very easily, and bring it to your ARD committee, or they could do it for you too. Sometimes they need a little help knowing exactly what it means to have an autism supplement, because a lot of the training comes, for instance, when the autism supplement first came out, educators went to their education service centers for training, and I was able to go to that training and see, all the teachers weren't there being trained on that. District personnel were being trained, and then they were going to bring it back to all the different campuses. But by the time that happens, you don't know what that looks like. So it's always great if you have ideas to help your teacher with your student, definitely whip something out like this that you might want to do on your computer. Or it doesn't have to be fancy or anything, but they probably would think this is a great idea for several students in their class. Next slide. Strategy number 8 is another big one, like behavior is. We have to give our students a way to communicate in some way, because if they don't have a way to communicate, they're going to communicate with behaviors. So make sure that the school, if your child is pre-verbal or nonverbal or struggles being understood, that they have a way to appropriately communicate. Try lots of different ways, pictures, symbols, sign language, assistive technology devices, um, and give them a way to communicate. And a lot of people think that if they use other means of communication, then their students will never talk. And actually, it's the opposite. All of these things help lead to verbal communication. And I don't know, Leonella, do you want to share a little bit about your son and his assistive technology device and how it's impacted him? Oh, Leonella?
I'm here. I'm sorry. It wasn't
Oh,
on
that's okay.
for me. Yes, for us, it was really life-changing for my son because he continues, of course, to be nonverbal, but having assistive technology for him was life-changing in the way that it not only helped them to communicate, but it also tremendously helped the behaviors. A lot of behaviors that Christopher had, we became well aware were because he was unable to communicate. Of course, at first, when he was introduced to the AT devices, we did go through many stages where he would fling them or try to break them when he had those behaviors. But then we had those transitions where he had the paper form or the laminated copies, and they slowly would gradually transition him into the device as he showed improvements. And he picked up on it really well that if he de-escalated those behaviors with the communication devices, life would be a lot more different for him. So it really helped, especially having all this in place for him, because if it wasn't in place for him, you would meet a whole nother Christopher.
Mhm. Well, thanks for sharing, Leonella. Yeah, even if you have I don't know if any of you have real young students, like when my son Cameron was in the early childhood program, they would have big, I think they called them Big Mac buttons, like a big red button, and they put a picture like by the door. They had a button and with a picture of the bathroom or a toilet. And that way, when the kids needed to go to the bathroom, they could go and hit that button and it would say, I need to go to the bathroom. And so that was their voice. Or maybe they used a voice output device where they could make choices, okay, with snack time, here's your choices. Which snack do you want? And when they press the button for goldfish, it says, I'd like goldfish or whatever. So all of that, whether it be low tech or high tech, really helps with communication. And for my son, it did lead to verbal language. So think about communication, try lots of different things, and make sure the school has a way for your child to communicate. And if your child does have an assistive technology device that they use at school, make sure everybody's trained on how to program them, how to use them, how to get the child to or the student to use the device. Next slide. Oh, and another thing about communication, speech therapy. I can't think of any students on the autism spectrum that shouldn't be receiving speech therapy, individual and in group, to generalize their skills. So if they do a speech therapy evaluation and they say your child doesn't need speech therapy or only needs a very small amount, that might be a good time to ask for an IEE, an independent evaluation for speech, and get a second opinion and see what they say. So communication is very important. Strategy number 9 is social skills, and a lot of times the speech and language pathologist works on social skills also. A lot of times they'll work one-on-one, maybe scripting about how to act in certain social situations, and then transitioning that skill into the general ed environment or into the general ed environment or a small group environment. And because we always want to teach skills in the natural environment, they may have to learn them one-on-one in a one-on-one environment, but then they should be generalized to the natural environment. And peers can help with that. Paraprofessional support can help with that. And there are social skills assessments or evaluations that the school could do. And a lot of times they don't really do those, but definitely you can ask for that if you're a student, because you can have a very smart student that knows a lot and can go on to college or graduate high school, go on to college or whatever, or have a job. But if they don't have appropriate social skills, that could really hold them back. Next slide. Strategy 10 is professional educator and staff support. So there should be general training for the teachers and paras on positive behavior supports, how to implement a behavior intervention plan. If your child is on using a peer-reviewed research-based reading or math intervention, people need to be trained on that to implement that appropriately. So it's okay to ask, what training has the staff had? Do they have any experience with children on the autism spectrum? Because they don't really learn a lot about specific disabilities, in college. And so we want to make sure and support the staff and make sure they get the training they need to do a good job with students with autism. So make sure and talk about that, ask about that. Next slide. Yeah, we definitely want to support our teachers and our paras. Maybe you want to do a what works for, like I did a what works for Cameron page with tips and tricks. Sometimes he said things and people didn't know what he was saying. So I made sure they knew, okay, when he says this, he means this, or when he does this, this is what's happening, and just give them as much information as you can to help them be a good teacher for your student. So we always want to support our teachers, and a lot of times they can't ask for the support. They don't feel comfortable asking for the support they need in the schools, but you can ask for that for them. You could ask, the autism, give the school information about the autism conference. Could my teacher go and attend the autism conference, and then she can come back and share her knowledge with everybody else at a teacher in service at the school. So definitely we want to support our teachers. Next slide. Here's some examples of that too. Just to give you some ideas for the autism supplement. A lot of times the teacher can have consultations with the other service providers, like the speech therapist, because the speech therapist isn't going to be with your child all day, but the teacher is. So consults with speech, OT, PT, any behavior specialist are really going to help the teacher. I know our district had the BCBAs in our district had implemented this flip chart for behavior. So these are just some different ideas and things that I've seen in the autism supplement under professional educators and staff support. Next slide. Strategy number 11 is teaching strategies. So a lot of teachers use a lot of different strategies to teach our kids, and that's fine, but they have to find something that works for your kids. So teaching strategies should be based on peer-reviewed, research-based interventions, and that's in the IDEA law. It doesn't necessarily mandate or endorse a particular methodology, but it does require consideration of the use of a specific methodology to the extent practical. So kind of like, for an example of that is my son, we went to school part-time and did ABA therapy part-time. And ABA was very effective with him. It was a very positive ABA therapy. And because we had data to support that that was an effective way to teach my son, this was in the teaching strategies for my son to use discrete trial training to learn a new something new and use the principles of ABA, to use structured learning, to use visual supports or augmentative communication, whatever it is that you've found helpful, you can put that in there. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to just set up an ABA program in the school for your child, but they can use research-based, peer-reviewed methods that are out there that, you know, maybe they try some and they're not working, but let's try something different. So, you know, some students don't do good with ABA. Maybe they would do better with the TEACH method, which is another autism training, another autism strategy, or, you know, like visual supports, just different things like that. So to the extent practicable. Next slide. I really like this website. It's still Texas Project First. That's the best way to get to it. If you go to texasprojectfirst.org, English, it's in Spanish too, autism, you're going to get connected to our statewide leadership for autism training. It's a great website. They have a video library where they have short videos for you to learn how to do different ways to work with your student. They have the target manual. Let's go to the next slide. The target manual, where they talk about all the different types of evaluations and interventions for students on the autism spectrum. Of course, some of these are going to be great for other students that don't necessarily have autism, because different disabilities sometimes have some of the same challenges that students with autism have. But these are peer-reviewed, research-based evaluations and interventions that work for students on the autism spectrum. And I really like this. So, you know, if you're, for instance, if your child's having a really hard time with social skills, go on there and you can view all the evaluations and put in social skills, and you'll see. And then if the next time your child's up for reevaluation, or if they haven't had one, a social skills evaluation and it was needed, you could say, oh, here's this social skills evaluation that I think would benefit my student. So just gives you a lot of good information and ideas. Next slide. And this is just like, they have online courses and you can put in different categories, just kind of showing you what's on there. Next slide. And this just shows like a few of the videos that are in their video library that you can take a look at, and could be helpful. That could be very helpful in helping the teacher and the para, and also helpful to you, because of course you're going to want to work with your child at home also. Next slide. This is the link for the Texas Autism Conference, which is coming up in June. If you get a chance to go, check it out. Sometimes, like I said, they have stipends where they may pay for part of your stay or your conference fee. So check that out. They usually have a big resource fair too, and it's just a really good conference if you ever get a chance to go. Next slide. And again, here's Texas Project First. This is the website that we created with a grant through the Texas Education Agency quite a while ago, and it's written for parents by parents. So we tried to put everything on this website in very parent-friendly terms. And I've just shared this page is all about autism, and it'll have links. Everything in blue is going to link you to like the strategies for autism. It's in English and Spanish, but down below, if you go to this page, it'll link you to the target manual and lots of good autism resources. And then also you can search any topic in the upper right-hand corner. And there's also a way to search by age range too. And just another good thing on here is just the special education process, how the ARD meeting is supposed to go, what to do if you disagree. Lots of great information, very parent friendly. Next slide. Okay, Judy, you're up. Okay, I don't know if Judy's with us right now.
Okay, there we go. So sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, my apologies. Let me unmute myself there. So, this is just kind of a thought-provoking question. Now that you've learned about those 11 strategies, how many strategies does your child need addressed in their IEP? Like Leslie mentioned, it's different for each child. It's called an IEP for a reason, an individualized education plan. So what Leslie's son needed, maybe my son didn't need. So you can either write your comments in the chat box, but we just want you to think about it. Next slide, please. So just remember that that disability label, all it is a passport for services. We don't really want to label our kids. We want them to be children first, and then to be accommodated or have modifications made for their disabilities so that they can be successful in the classroom. Try not to label your child if at all possible. Those labels don't do anything except provide for that free and appropriate education. Next slide, please.
But you do need a label for special education.
Yeah, for special education. Yes, thank you. So what I did was I put the survey link in the chat box. Please, 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 please complete the survey link, because this is a grant-funded program. We just couldn't do this for free. We love you all. We want to support our parents in any way that we can, but we can't work for free either because we have bills to pay just like y'all do. So our grant funders like to know that what we discussed was helpful, meaningful, and that it made a difference. So please make sure that you complete the survey. And if you could, if you need the slides or the recording link, you can email me. If most of the people complete the survey link, I'll probably send the recording. But if nobody does, I'm not going to, because I've got to get those survey results, because we have mandated reporting and we have to report to our grant funders. So does anyone have any questions?
Also, if anybody would like me to send them my son's autism supplement, just
please email.
As an example, just email me. My email's there. Or if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Leonella, did you want to stop sharing the screen, please? Does anyone have any questions? We have a quiet group today, but that's okay. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will be having our next presentation in Spanish next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Leonela, could you let everyone know that, please?
Tendremos esta clase de nuevo el miércoles que viene a las 6 p.m. en español.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of the evening.
Bye, everybody.